and sunshine, rocking the good time with all our friends. Easy and carefree, out in the summer breeze, loving a simple things for hours on end. Right about sundown, we lay on the ground, count on the stars as they come out one at a time. Ain't this a sweet life?
Hey everybody, I'm X Factor winner Tate Stevens, and welcome to the Sweet Life Podcast, where we talk about everything from music, sports, food, entertainment, and, well, just living the sweet life. Hey everybody, Tate Stevens here along with AJ Kronk as always. Man, this is going to be a fun episode. This is kind of our second episode for the wrestling thing, right?
Yep.
We had my cousin Jody, who wrestled in the 70s and 80s in the NWA and AWA and all through that whole cool era back in the day.
Yeah.
And
you can see some cool YouTube clips if you look up. Was it Tommy Sharp?
Yeah, Tommy Sharp.
Tommy Sharp.
He
was
wrestled.
his name.
He wrestled. He wrestled everybody. Honky Tonk Man. He wrestled everybody when he was in the
There's
WWF.
one. He got beat up by Hercules, I think.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He got crushed. He got crushed. Anyway, so this, like earlier, if you listen to the first wrestling episode, we grew up watching wrestling. We were huge fans of wrestling. Mm-hmm. And then, growing up, and then having Hayden, when he was a little kid, he got into it, and that was the Attitude Era when he was in, the mid '90s, and it, of course, Stone Cold and The Rock and Triple H, and it was awesome watching him kind of go through what I went through as a little kid. Mm-hmm. He bought in, he believed, right?
Yep.
Just like we all did when we were young, and It's so anyway, it's kind of cool. So today we have another wrestler on. We have a friend of mine, and who I met through my road manager, Jeff Hawkins, and Kelly Corbett. They helped her out too, and I know they helped her with some of her social media stuff for a while and things like that. And they anyway just became friends and kind of helped her along the way. But we have ODB. Or Jessica Kresa, I think is how you say her last name, Kresa. ODB from TNA and Impact Wrestling. Yeah. And man, listen, she's a firecracker, dude.
She's freaking crazy, man.
She's yeah. If you know who I'm talking about, you're gonna enjoy this because she's no holds barred in everything she does.
Yep.
Right. So if you're a little kid, you might want to not listen to this one. This has got some language in it, but other than that, man, she's super cool, awesome, and her stories are great. It's kind of cool. It's a different perspective, from things when, making $25 to $50 a night. And, she was making $300 a night.
Yeah.
Which is cool. So,
yes, sir.
Anyway. All right. Well, here's ODB. We are live right now. We're not live. Well, we're live. AJ and I are live, and she's live driving in her food truck right now, talking to ODB, professional wrestler and now professional food trucker, right?
Yeah.
Food truck, man, that's awesome. So listen, I know the jumps from wrestling obviously to the food truck industry is completely like it was just an unknown thing. You just said we're just going to do it, right?
Yeah, I'd rather be wrestling, I think.
So, okay, let's go back to Minnesota. That's where you're from Minnesota. So obviously a wrestling fan, growing up a wrestling fan, right?
Huge. I mean, I'm from Minnesota. That's where all the legends were made,
Right. So what was it that drew you to professional wrestling early on in your life, like as a kid? What was it that made you buy in and believe?
I mean, I loved it growing up. Like, my dad would take us to shows. The first wrestler I actually met was Jumpin' Jim Bronzell from the Killer Bees.
Yeah.
He was the very first wrestler I met. And we would have parties, like pay-per-view parties growing up, SummerSlam.
Yeah.
The Royal Rumble was my favorite pay-per-view.
Right.
Like, counting down and who's coming out next? Oh my God. And then just watching those guys, they were larger than life.
Right. Absolutely.
You know, and they're not larger than life much anymore. I'm bigger than all the guys in the ring.
So
you know, they don't make them like they used to.
Right. Okay. So you're, get through high school. I mean, did you start right out of high school, or what did you do after high school? Did you go to college? What happened?
What's that?
I said, did you start wrestling right out of high school, or did you go to college? Did you try something and say, you know what, I'm going to be a wrestler. This is what I want to do.
Yeah. Well, I've always been always wanted to be a badass chick, and I used to beat my older brother up in front of his girlfriends. So that kind of started it all.
Right.
And then my dad would come downstairs and give my brother the stomach claw. So I always knew I wanted to become a wrestler, but I was just like, oh my God, there's no way, because these guys are larger than life. I'm like, where do these guys come from? And then I'm like, shit, they're in my hometown. I'm like, okay. And then I got, I'm a Minnesota chick, so I'm like, well, so then I went out, I did college, all that crap, came back. I actually got kicked out of college, but that's another podcast.
Right.
But and then I was always always had ODB inside me a little bit, I think. So I was always a little feisty.
Right.
And then I came back home. I was 21, I think. I believe 21. And I looked up, Googled up wrestling schools, and Eddie Sharkey is the one that trained me.
Hey man, that and he's one of the best in the business as far as wrestling schools, and I mean so many big artists or big stars, not artists, but big wrestlers came from his school, right?
Yeah. Eddie Sharp, he founded the World Warriors, Mr. Perfect and Ravishing Rick Rude, and I was the last person that he trained that made it. And it's, he just taught me so much. He didn't really teach me the stuff in the ring. He taught me the business side.
Wow,
which I'm thankful for.
That's huge. From what we gather, if you can handle the business, you can handle the stuff in the ring. So
yeah.
Well, that's awesome. So what was it? 2001? Is that when you debuted? 2001?
2001 is when I started training. I had my first match was my first 4 months in the business. I had my first match at a bar in Minneapolis. Oh Lordy! Thank God that was not on tape. But you cannot find that on VHS or nothing.
my cousin Jody was a professional wrestler, and he said his very first match was against Hacksaw Jim Duggan, and neither one of them had ever wrestled. This was both of their first matches.
Oh my God! So
he said all we did, we stood around and beat ourselves and pulled on the ropes and just kind of, we didn't know what to do. He said they were both young, right out of school, basically, trying to get it figured out. And he said we quickly learned. You quickly learned what to do and all of that. But anyway, so you I think it said you debuted though in 2001. Was that with TNA or was that somewhere else?
I didn't get to TNA officially get there until 2007.
Okay, all right.
So I debuted here and there, but not I officially signed a contract with TNA in 07.
And okay, cool. So now, and I know. So what was it? Let's say your first year on the road as a wrestler, as a professional wrestler, your first year, the struggles, because it's not easy. You're not making a ton of money that first year out, right? I mean, you're wrestling for beans.
Your first year, you can't negotiate your contract because you don't have.
Right.
But your first contract, you're take it or leave it, and then you got to prove to them that you're worth. Then it was fun. After I, paid my dues a couple years at TNA, and then I'm like, all right, Time to pay me some more money, bitches.
Yeah. Okay, so I mean, were you wrestling for the standard, $50, $100 a show kind of thing, or I mean, what was the pay then when you first started? Do you remember? Like,
what was that?
I said, what was your pay when you first came out? How much were you getting paid per match or per show when you first started?
Oh, like in TNA days?
Yeah.
Oh God, I've never even shared this before. Oh shit.
It's all good. It's all good, man. And no one, here's the thing. Here's the thing about wrestling and the.
I look back. See, good. Yeah, I haven't even shared this in any interviews. I guess I'll share it. I don't give a fuck. Yeah, so back in 2007, my contract was $300 a match. And I was on TV. I was on Spike TV.
Right. $300 a match.
Yeah.
Wow.
Makes me want to kind of throw up right now, actually.
But
I was like, damn, I did that for $300. I was like,
but I mean, in that time, you were probably 100% in. You didn't care, right? I mean, you didn't care if you made $300 or $1,000 a night.
No,
you just wanted to do it.
I knew I was gonna be making more. Because the more you wrestle, obviously, the more money you make. And then you get to go on house shows, like non-televised shows, and 300 times 4 days a week add up. So you're like, ooh, all right, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then it starts to add up, and then it's like, the more popular I got, and then I was like, all right, let's add some zeros after this fucking 300.
And what about merchandise? Like, did you control your own merch, or did they? Like your T-shirts and all your stuff, was that you, or did they have all that?
What was that?
Your merchandise, like your T-shirts and stuff. Did they handle all of that, or did you do it?
Yeah, I was actually one of the very first girls to get a T-shirt because I was so different than any of them. Right. Because they all did bikini shoots, and I wasn't the bikini kind of chick. I was like, that's not where I'm going to make my money. And
right.
So I got my merchandise sales were the sales were good, but I didn't see no goddamn money. It's basically you make what I made my money at is outside of TNA, so it got me the exposure to do the independent stuff. So like if I was off on a weekend from TNA, let's say Joe Blow from Memphis wanted to fly me in. So they had to fly me in. They paid me way more than $300 because they had no idea what we were getting paid, back then. Right. Then they brought me in. They put me up in a nice hotel. And, then that's where I brought because TNA would give me my merchandise. So that was cool. I didn't have to buy it.
That's good.
So they gave me, and then I sold it and kept it in on my 8x10s. And that's the one thing that was cool. They did give you a bunch of shit and you had to pay for it.
Right.
I had my royalties. Yeah, I had no royalties.
So TNA came in, and now you were a 4-time knockout champ?
Yeah.
So, and that's like the women's, I'm just badass. I won the belt 4 times, right?
What's that?
I said, so you were a 4-time knockout, the women's champion, right? The knockout.
Yeah, women's, and then I get I was the longest reigning tag team champ.
Right, I saw that.
TNA history with a man. So it was intergender. But then they took the belts away. It was a big storyline. They took them away.
Nice. And
so I was going to steal the belts actually, but they actually caught me kind of doing it. So like, Dad, give me something here.
Right. Now looking back on now are you with Impact now, or what are you doing now? Can you, now I know you went from TNA to, was it Impact or something like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did you go to Impact?
Yeah, Impact now. So TNA, it went through a lot of different owners when I was there. I was there when it was good, like the good days, and then Spike TV finally we got picked up by Spike TV, and then the money started, rolling in. And then, but then Jeff Jarrett went away, and then the TNA kind of went away. So then it was just Impact.
Right.
Which is good. I mean, they're still alive, so that's good. And, I went back a couple months ago and got in the ring with the younger, I wrestled girls half my age, so that was fun.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, so when did you kind of back out of the wrestling? When was it? When did you kind of start easing out of wrestling more and trying to look for something else?
My contract was over in 2014. They did offer me another contract, and I turned it down. My heart wasn't there anymore. It was they were kind of treating like I kind of knew I was on my way out without them telling me my way out. So a little sun to my eyes here. And I was like, you know what? I think I've done everything I needed to do here, and I was ready to go into the barbecue world, and I'm glad I did. Actually, it was perfect timing.
Right. Now I remember because we have mutual friends.
Yeah.
And I remember when you got your sauce, just when the sauce came out. So and it was awesome because you guys got into Pepper Palace and a bunch of different sauce places, which was cool. So how did you go about the sauce thing? How did that even come around?
I was actually on a cooking show with my good buddy Joey Fatone from NSYNC. He actually came to Minnesota, and he came to my Airstream, and it was called My Family Recipe Rocks. It was a cooking show he did, and he was I met him backstage actually at TNA. Like, you're talking probably like 2010 or 9. I think he was hanging out, and I was like, shit, that's fucking Joey Fatone. I backed it up and introduced myself, and it was cool because he's good people. Like, he's very laid back, and then him and his manager were like, do you go out and drink? I was like, do I go out and drink after the show? Come on now, I already started drinking. So then we became good buddies and stuff, and then he came to Minnesota, his whole television crew, and we taped an episode, and I was kind of getting noticed from that show. Like, they did a really good job promoting my ODB brand, and then that's when I kind of got the sauce kind of came at me, and then got help developing my own sauce.
Right.
And then went on my own little barbecue sauce tour with my Airstream.
I remember because that was right after I won the X Factor, and like I said, we have mutual friends, and I remember they were talking. They were like, "Hey, you got to hook up with ODB. She's awesome. You're a big wrestling fan. She's a professional wrestler, and all that stuff." And I remember one time, I don't know if you remember this. Craig Morgan's fiddle player, he's a huge wrestling fan, and I had you call him and tell him, I said, listen, just call him and say, Jim Ed, I heard you've been talking trash, and I will whoop your ass. And he loved it. It was the coolest. He thought that was the best. He thought that was the greatest thing. He was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe she called." And I was like, "Oh yeah, dude. She literally, when she sees you, she's gonna shove your fiddle bow in your butt, dude." And anyway, he thought it was the greatest thing ever. So that was.
Oh my God, that's funny.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. But so you grew up a wrestling fan.
Yeah.
Became a professional wrestler. Mom and dad, were they cool with all of it? They were all in, right? Mom and dad.
They were all in. They were actually pretty excited. It's cool. I grew up in a good family home. Mom and dad are still together to this day, and there's a good old middle class, blue collar people, and just like they always supported my dreams, even though like some of my shit I've done in my life, they're like, oh lordy, but they always were there just in case I need to come home and recharge. But they believed in me, and then I still actually, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. I remember they got to be at a lot of my pay-per-views. Like, they came to a lot of shows. They got to come backstage and, meet Ric Flair and Hogan. And so awesome. That to me, like, when you can do that to your family. That's awesome. And, like, then you can see them in the crowd wearing your T-shirt and holding a sign up. That's pretty badass, Yeah, that's awesome. And I always love how and you can introduce them to pretty cool people. You know what I mean? I'm like, just don't embarrass me, please. I don't just bring anyone backstage. Right. What would you say? What would you say your the best situation, the best time that if you can remember, like, this match put me over, or this match really was the best shot I had in my career? This match, what would that have been? Actually, it wasn't even a match. It was, I got to get, married in the ring. And not like with my character, I got to do a lot of cool shit that not a lot of characters got to do, because I was so different. Like, if I wasn't involved in the women's division, I got to have my own talk show. I got to get married in a steel cage. And so it's pretty badass to get married in a steel cage and to have everyone backstage, like, watching it. And then we get back, and in you go back and watch my wedding. I was down to my bra and panties. Like, I had to take my wedding dress off. Right. And so I'm walking back. After, commercial break. And the first person I see, I'm in my bra and panties. I see frickin' Hulk Hogan. And he just starts clapping. He's like, fucking awesome job, ODB. He's like, you killed it. And he puts his arms. He's like, do you need a shirt? I'm like, no, give me a hug, Hulk. I was like, let's go on my honeymoon. Yeah. That's awesome. So you think that was probably like the pivotal defining, like, yeah, because I kind of, like, I looked at myself too, like, I knew in wrestling that I was building something bigger than just wrestling to me. Right. In the back of my mind, I was like, all right, this is kind of like the start of my brand. And I think I know I'm going to do other things other than just wrestling as ODB. Like, and now, I look back at it, and cause I never really been asked that question before. So it's kind of like, and that like memory actually is the first thing that, has popped up. So yeah, I was like, I think that was it when I kind of knew that there was more than just wrestling to me. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like, I was more than just a wrestler. Like, I wasn't the best technical wrestler, but right. I was a character, and there's not many characters in wrestling, anymore. Right. I talking like AJ and I are huge wrestling fans, have been growing up. We bought in, right? We bought into our characters. Yeah. I mean, dude, when I was a little kid, there was nobody that was better than Tommy Wildfire Rich. There wasn't a guy who could, dude, I'm telling you, man, he was my guy when I was a little kid. And that's funny. So, I mean, obviously we had Harley Race, because I'm, from Missouri, and he's from Missouri. So we had Harley Race and Bulldog Bob Brown and all these dudes, right, from the NWA and all that. And that's where my cousin was wrestling at the time. And then, growing up in that, having those guys, having our guys that we really liked, the Von Erichs and those, Kerry Von Erich, everybody wanted to look like Kerry Von Erich, because he was, you know what I mean? And so listening to Gordon Sully talk, interview people, there was nothing better than, hell yeah. And so we grew up in that, AJ and I, and we grew up in that era of wrestling where it was real for us. I mean, it was real. Yeah. We bought it. And now looking back on it, obviously we know about it and the ins and outs a little more, but still it's kind of funny because I watched wrestling today. And oh boy! And you watch those little kids and those kids when Roman Reigns comes out,
dude, Roman Reigns is a god to these people, right?
Yeah, right.
And they bought in like we did when we were little. And it's neat to see. It's one of those things. It's like, oh my God, that's awesome. And so this is kind of a big deal. We were talking when we started this podcast, like what are we going to talk about? What are the things that? And I said, well, let's call it the Sweet Life Podcast, right? And just talk about shit that's in our life and what we like. So
I like that, yeah.
And so the wrestling thing had to have been talked about. I said 3 episodes ago, I had my cousin Jody on, and he told the stories from the 70s and 80s, man. So,
oh damn, nice.
So he traveled with Andre the Giant. He got to travel with Andre. He got to travel with some of those dudes, and like it was kind of surreal sometimes, the stories he got to tell us and things like that, and so having you on now, you're more the new coming out of the Attitude Era wrestling thing, you know what I mean? So that's what you guys were doing.
Yeah, it was kind of like the end of a good era,
right?
Now I look like I still watch wrestling. Obviously it's still part of my life,
right? But
it's so like, God, these people, the kids that are like wrestling these days, they're not experiencing like how. I go to a locker room now and there's no Booker T's, there's no Kevin Nash, there's no Steiner brothers, there's no Kurt Angles.
Right.
They got a long way to go, but it's just like I got to be in that era.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I got to and I took advantage of that. Like I went out every night, and that's what you have to do in a business, in any business. Like you got to mingle.
Yeah, absolutely.
You got to I held it up, like with the Dudley Boys and Ric Flair. And Ric Flair tried to give me like a kamikaze shot. I'm like, bitch, give me a real shot. And he looked at me. He was like, whoa. Like, well, alrighty. And it's like, it's cool. Like nowadays, like some of these kids, like they play video games. They don't even like go out to the bar. I'm like, throw some balls and like this is what this business is all about. It's not,
Right.
Like
right.
Now they all just worry about how cool they are on social media
and how pretty they are. And it's like, how pretty can they be? You know what I mean? It's like everybody's pretty. Everybody's a pretty boy or a some sort of model looking woman. And it's hard, back in the day, like AJ and I talked about this also. You remember back in the day, there was only a handful of guys that had like big muscles that were all muscled up. They were just regular dudes. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. They were just dudes that would come out of a bar and whoop your ass and then go back in and drink beer, right? I mean, that's what they did.
I know.
Now it seems like everybody's really super ultra pretty and not that they can't come out and you know what I mean, and whoop, throw hands with somebody, but it's almost like it's a different time, and obviously wrestling's kind of morphed into more of a show. Now it's more of a hey, we got this show that we have to, you gotta confine yourself in between these walls, so who was your favorite wrestler to hang out with, just to chill and like, they're awesome. These people are awesome people. They're great at their craft. This is where it's at.
Well, the girls, and I talk to a lot of the girls every day, basically. Lisa Marie, she was Victoria in WWE.
Right.
Mickey James was also a good one. Gail Kim. I just love all those girls. Brooke Adams, like we all still talk, get together when we can. And then with the guys, Steiners were fun.
Right.
And Kevin Nash, I got to drink a lot with him. He was actually one of the coolest because he liked hanging out with the younger generation because, we wanted to like, there's sometimes where I wouldn't even talk. I would just be drinking, listening to Nash tell his stories.
Well, yeah, that's how you learn.
Yeah, it's like shut the fuck up, and and like we actually were on a plane together. We had a layover. I think we were in Jersey, and then we had another layover in Atlanta, and we were coming back to Daytona Beach together, and we were up in first class and drinking wine, and then he dropped me off at my Airstream. It's like, thank you for a fun plane ride. He's like, that was a lot of fun. I was like, no, thank you. I'm like, that was so fun just to like we just, shoot the shit. And we just talked about life. Like it was just badass.
So, is there anything that you would try to redo or maybe not that you regret, but maybe you should, that you're like,
well, I've maybe a few things I regret.
Well, I'm saying in the business, in the wrestling world, if you could go back and go, there's always those roads. You can go right or you can go left. And I mean, not that you're not doing exactly what you want to do right now and all that. Do you think can you picture in your mind if you would have went right instead of left, it could have been completely different. Maybe you would have been, a big WWE star or whatever. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah, the only thing, like, I really didn't knock on WWE's door. Maybe that could have been different if I actually would have, because I think I'm very respected in the wrestling business. I didn't make any enemies, but I think like that was maybe my downfall. Like I just didn't reach out to WWE, and I remember they called me because I think they were looking for like. They always have like extras and stuff they always wanted to bring in and they were doing, God, this had to be at least 4 or 5 years ago. And they were doing Nia Jax. They were like kind of just debuting her and she was just beating up a lot of people.
Right.
And they're like, are you in Minneapolis? Because I was like, it's kind of weird they called. And I knew exactly what they're calling for. I'm like, I'm not just going to be a random person going to the ring and having fucking Nia Jax beat the shit out of me. I was like, like good thing I was, because I'm not a mark for myself. You know what I mean? I was like,
right. You're not a jobber.
Whatever.
You're not a jobber.
Right.
You're not, you're not a jobber. You're somebody. Right.
Yeah. So I said I wasn't in town. I was like, man, I'm not in town. But they're like, is the door always open? And I was like, well, it never wasn't open. I'm like, I just never begged. Because a lot of people beg for jobs. I just never did.
Right.
So I don't know. But it ended up turning out all right. But sometimes, I don't know. Like, I guess something could have happened, I guess, if I begged. But
well,
I think
not that, that's what I'm saying. Not that you would have begged for anything. But if you see, was there something that somebody said, hey, maybe make this phone call because this person could really help you, and you didn't for whatever reason, or you know what I mean? Something like that where you're like, man, I wish I would have, if I could have done that, maybe I would have been.
No, I think I did. Nah, I'm kind of glad I did my route. Like, I think I did good. Like I didn't, there was time, when I left TNA, I was like, oh shit, you think it was time to leave yet? Maybe I could have got another run in, but I think it all did good. Happened for a reason. Well,
and that's like for me, like in the music world, for me, years ago, people were like, move to Nashville. You gotta, and I never did. I never, because this was home, Missouri's always been home for me. And I, for whatever reason, maybe I should have, and my life might be a little different, or it might be a lot different in a bad way.
In a bad way, yes.
Yeah. So I don't regret that. I don't ever sit around going, damn, I wish I would have done this or I should have done that. But, there's always that one thing, like we talk about songs, get pitched songs in the music business, and you hear a song and you're like, oh, that's really good. I need to kind of follow up with that song.
Yeah.
And you never do, and then it becomes a hit for someone else, and you're like, "Oh, you know what I mean?" If I would only said I want to cut that song, that could have been my song or whatever. So, like,
Oh shit! Yeah.
you know, that's how it is in the music business. But I didn't know in the wrestling industry if there was ever a moment where you're like, man, I should have. They told me to call so and so, and I never did. I lost his number or whatever. You know.
Oh god, yeah. Yeah,
But,
I guess I never really had that. No, I'm good.
Well, that's
Yeah.
good. That's great. That's good for you. And so let's move on. Let's move on to food trucking, man. What is?
Yeah.
So you come out with your sauce. You have your sauce, and then obviously a complete different world. You're in a new, entirely different,
Oh yeah.
avenue of money
Yep.
and work, and completely different than anything you've ever done. So what was the jump? I mean, what made you say, you know what? I'm going to buy a food truck. This is what I'm going to do.
Well, it's weird because I actually started. Jimmy Hart actually called me on the phone. Mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart, and
Yeah.
he had a bar that was connected into a hotel right on Daytona Beach. And at the time, I was thinking about doing a food truck, and I haven't done it yet. And he reached out to me. He's like, "Hey, girl, what's up, baby?" And I'm like, "What's up, Jimmy?" And everyone knew I bartended still. Like when I wrestled, I was always a bartender back in my hometown. And he's like, you still bartending and you still want to do a food truck? I'm like, yeah. He's like, well, I think you should come to Daytona. I think it would be a good place for you to start your food truck. But for now, you could run my bar for me and, and bartend and stuff. I was like, fucking how? I'm like, right there. I'm like, I got to. I'm like, fucking Jimmy Hart calls you.
Right.
And so I packed up my Airstream, and then they put me up in a hotel right on the beach. I'm like, oh God, that's dangerous. I was like, so that was cool. So I got to, hang out with Jimmy Hart for like at least a year and bartend at the bar. And it was fun. Like,
is he a pretty good dude?
Oh, he's awesome. He's good people.
Is he kind of how he is on what we see is he kind of that way in real life?
Exactly how you see him on TV. Yeah. Yep.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So then I went there, and then kind of jumped in, got a trailer, and just kind of jumped into the food truck business. And it was a shit show my first 2 years, I do admit. I do admit that. Like it was bad. But then once I got like the hang of it, and then I moved back to Minnesota, and then did the food truck thing there. And then the food truck actually burnt down. My first trailer like burned to the ground. Like I lost everything.
Right.
But, I had insurance, but I had to fight for that. But then I got my dream food truck, which I have now, which I just got last year during the shit show 2020. So I got that, and it's been fucking phenomenal after that. Like it's a lot of work because I run it myself. I book my own stuff. I run it. I cook it. It's a lot of work, but it's been a fun journey with it. Like I'm actually excited to see where else it brings me.
Right.
Because there's so much, it's just like there's so much I can do with this food truck. And I don't even know what I can do with it. You know what I mean? Like I'm excited for the journey to see what happens with this, see where this takes me.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, again, you're doing what you love to do.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, what they say, everybody, every time, who's that? Is that your man?
Oh yeah. Oh Lordy. So who the fuck you talking to?
Who you talking to? Who you talking to? Who you talking to, boy? All right. Well, anyway, listen, no, I mean, so doing what you love to do, that has to be great. It's a great feeling. I know I have a great feeling when I get to wake up and go, what? It is work. It is a lot of work, but it's what I love to do, and it's okay. I'm okay with that, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. I know you got a date. I know you got a dinner. You got a dinner thing. You got a dinner thing with your man. I get that, and so we're not going to keep you too much longer. But I appreciate you taking the time and talking with us.
I'm so glad you reached out. It's been a couple of years since we've.
I know. And so, whenever now, are you mainly in Florida right now? Is that kind of where you're?
Yes.
Okay. So,
yeah.
I guess it wouldn't. Yeah. I'm trying to figure out maybe how like people can come see you. Are you in a certain spot right now where you're going to be for a month or is it?
I actually this week, I just nailed down a permanent spot.
Okay.
So if you go follow me on my website, ODB's Meet and Greet, and all over social media, I have a permanent spot in Seffner, Florida. It's kind of right outside of Tampa.
Okay. Seffner?
Yeah, Seffner. Yep.
Oh, that's awesome. So if you ever do wrestle, you could do, Zach Brown does a thing. He calls them eat and greets.
Oh, shit, yeah.
Instead of meet and greet, he calls it an eat and greet because he cooks food for everybody that comes to the meet and greet. And they do all this. Yeah, it's really cool. It's a great idea. He's a super smart man. You could do something. See, you could do that. You could go to a wrestling event and do I
have done those. I did WrestleMania. I just need, I need like a crew to get with me because that's my goal is to take my meet and greet all over, and obviously wrestling's a big part of it. So like to really go to shows and do one hell of a meet and greet. So
yeah, that would be awesome. I think that would be
follow a country singer and go on the road.
See, there we go. All right. Listen, I super appreciate it. I know, like I said, it's awesome, to be able to talk to you today, and thanks for taking your time. I know you guys are busy and doing what you do.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate you asking me to do this.
It's cool. Awesome. It's awesome. And like I said, AJ and I are huge wrestling fans. So we wanted this is our part 2. It'll probably be a part 3 of this whole wrestling thing. But anyway, I appreciate the stories, and just the time. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you guys.
Yep. So we'll see you down the road for sure. And
hey,
what we'll do is we'll put all your social media stuff. So text me all your social stuff. Okay. And then that way we'll blast it out to all our social stuff, and you can, we'll do all that, and we'll get a bunch of people listening to this thing. So it'll be cool.
Hell yeah.
All right, man. Hey, you have a great night. Have a great dinner, and tell your man it was just me.
Yeah, right. He's gonna go Google you now.
Yeah. All right. You have a good night, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, bye, boys.
All right, see ya. All right, guys, thanks for listening to another great episode of the Sweet Life Podcast with Tate Stevens and AJ Kronk.
Yep.
So, man, make sure you guys subscribe. That was so good. Make sure you guys subscribe to our YouTube channel, which has the videos and stuff. You can go back and watch, and watch how dumb I look for sure. And make sure you leave a review. And give us a 5-star rating.
Yes.
That's very important for us. But leave reviews, man. Good, bad, ugly. Who cares? We need to read them. We need to get better. So that's how we do it.
Just as long as you leave the 5 stars. That's it.
Yeah. I don't care. You guys be like, you guys are the worst ever. But give us 5 stars. That's all we care about.
On Apple Podcasts.
Apple Podcasts.
Yes.
And Podbean. And everywhere else you can get podcasts.
Yep.
All right, guys. Stay tuned for the next one. It's going to be fun.
Ain't this a sweet life?
Hey, guys. Thanks for listening. Want to ask a question for a future episode? Well, hit us up on Facebook or Twitter with #SweetLifePodcast. And be sure to give us a 5-star rating and hit that subscribe button. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure you follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to stay up to date on the latest news and information for the Sweet Life Podcast. And we'll see you next time.